Former Taipei Mayor柯文哲hip-hop video illustrates just how his somewhat quirky candidacy is mixing up the race for the Taiwan presidency. At 64 years of age, this former trauma surgeon turned third-party politician is taking on what's been an entrenched political duopoly of the incumbent DPP and the opposition KMT, with a straightforward, if not unconventional approach that polls suggest resonates with younger voters.
We are different from traditional politicians. They are too fake, and young people don't like that.
Bloomberg News spent the better part of 2 days with Ke on the campaign trail, as no other outside candidate had ever given the political establishment such a formidable challenge.
Why do you want to be president of Taiwan?
Frankly, we shouldn't be thinking about who will be the best president of Taiwan, rather, who is the most suitable. The DPP will continue to maintain tension with China. The risk of war in Taiwan will remain, and Taiwan's economy will continue to deteriorate because China will definitely do everything possible to block Taiwan. And the KMT is too obedient to China. Therefore, they can't gain the trust of the Taiwanese people, so there needs to be someone in the middle.
Ke's platform towards mainland China is built on two principles: deterrence and dialogue. Yes, he is in favor of a bigger defense budget, but that must be accompanied by better communication with Beijing.
We shouldn't fantasize that we can completely change the current situation in one day. But even more, we shouldn't fantasize that if we don't do anything, the situation will change on its own. A real important principle is we have to think of a way to have dialogue with China, and not just always tell them no, because after no, there is no other step.
Ke also disagrees that its major chip makers like TSMC have no other step but to decouple from China and depart for other markets. It's costly and inefficient, he says, to move chip making to America or elsewhere. Defusing tension with China, he says, is the better approach.
If tensions between Taiwan and mainland China continue to rise, we don't need a war. Just the tense situation is enough to result in a decline of foreign investment. A lot of rich people in Taiwan have already started to move their money away. Foreign investment doesn't dare to come in, and the outflow of capital is already causing damage to Taiwan. So that's why we must try to do as much as we can to lower the risk of war.
While Ke sees himself as a straight-talking, apolitical pragmatist, he's also been dogged by questions about his personality, namely some, dare we say, uncharitable comments he's made towards women, as well as an acknowledged social awkwardness that he's self-diagnosed as a mild case of the behavioral disorder Asperger's syndrome.
For a man who says he doesn't feel too comfortable in social settings, the candidate Ke has to do a lot of handshaking on the campaign trail. Good luck, sir. Do you enjoy meeting with people and talking to them, or do you have... No?
Not too much. I work in ICU, surgeon death care unit. All my patients are intubated. They cannot speak.
Right.
Almost all my patients, they are intubated.
Intimate, so you don't need to talk to them.
I don't need to talk with them.
Did it desensitize you?
Almost. But to work in ICU, you cannot be emotional. If we believe, in order for her to be a civilized country, our people must be rational. Cannot be bad, not too emotional.
For now, the accidental candidate, as Ke likes to call himself, has resonated with centrists within an otherwise polarized electorate. Simply put, he's different and direct. The trick now is to avoid any missteps inside his campaign or across the strait ahead of the election January 13th. Stephen Engle, Bloomberg News, Taipei.
What is your strategy to make up the difference and make sure that you win? What is the winning strategy down the home stretch?
The most important thing is that politics is the process of persuasion, so we still need to persuade the Taiwanese public that we'd be the best choice. We have to put our good points out there. We don't have the baggage of other political parties. The Taiwan's People Party has much less corruption issues. Secondly, we represent a fresh political force. If the governing parties had governed efficiently up until now, the public wouldn't be looking for us. It's only because they're unhappy with the two parties that have governed Taiwan for the past 30 to 40 years that we have a chance at all.
How would you, on this day, articulate your stance on cross-strait relations, whether it leans more towards a status quo and de facto independence, or more towards the Kuomintang, which would like to see much more engagement with mainland China?
For the time being, maintaining the status quo is the only choice we have because the U.S. won't let Taiwan unify with China, and China won't let Taiwan become independent. There's no point in even talking about independence or unification right now because you can't achieve either. So there's no reason to engage in unnecessary politics for something we can't achieve at this time.
But how would you diffuse the tension across the strait with China as president?
To handle the relations between Taiwan and China as things stand, there are two words: deterrence and communication. First, Taiwan needs to have a strong enough national defense. You can't leave a country's future completely in the hands of another country. So Taiwan needs to have the capability to protect itself. If you don't have the capability to protect yourself, you won't be given the opportunity to speak at the negotiating table. We are very clear about this. We can't go up against China with our own military. We need to let China know that attacking Taiwan would have a very high cost. So deterrence is one principle. The other principle is communication. As long as there is communication, it will reduce misunderstandings and constantly rising hostility between the two sides.
How would you reform the military then and defense spending? Tsai Ing-wen's government this last year put forward a budget that will be a record high. Yes, a slower pace, but still a record high in spending. Do you agree with what she is doing, or would you agree that there needs to be more of an asymmetric approach?
The national defense budget needs to go up because peace comes at a cost. What we don't like about the DPP is that they are opposing China every day, but I can't see them making any preparations. I agree with the move to raise the national defense budget to 3% of GDP, but we disagree on their reckless spending. For the defense of an island nation like Taiwan, the priority should be cybersecurity, Air Force, Navy, and then Army, in that order, so the budget should be distributed accordingly.
I'm sure you're aware of the Pentagon report that 2027 seems to be a target date that many military officials in the United States see as the possibility of a Chinese invasion of Taiwan. Is that something you give credence to, and how would you mitigate against that possibility?
China's intentions towards Taiwan haven't changed in the past 70 years. The only thing that's changed is that China has become stronger. Whatever preparations the Chinese Communist Party is doing, Taiwan has to prepare accordingly. We have to communicate with our counterparts on the basis of having self-defense capabilities. So we should start with things that are not controversial, such as culture and sports. This wouldn't be a problem. Neither will oppose. Then we start to increase economic exchanges, which no one will object to. We must leave the political negotiations to the very end.
Do you think China essentially will talk to you if you don't accept the 92 consensus?
When China asks if we accept the 1992 consensus, the DPP government directly says no. My answer is there doesn't seem to be a marker for this in Taiwan. Should we change the name? Let's say you want to reject someone, you still shouldn't directly say no because that doesn't leave any room for change. So I still believe that with dialogue, there's an increase in goodwill, and only with goodwill is there a way to take the next step.
Well, Xi Jinping obviously likes one country, two systems for Hong Kong. That would never work for Taiwan, I assume?
Firstly, Taiwan has its own troops and elected government, so Taiwan is definitely not Hong Kong. The fundamentals are different. Secondly, if China brings one country, two systems to the DPP will answer no. My answer is the Hong Kong way doesn't have a market in Taiwan. Maybe we should think about other possibilities. A real important principle is we have to think of a way to have dialogue with China, and not just always tell them no, because after no, there is no other step.